pledge. I can't. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was worried about you there for a second.
Yeah, I got a little hung up there. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are at resident comments and questions for any items not on the agenda. Going once. All right. No reports, no public hearings. I'd entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion, and are you good on those, Brenda? Do you need me to repeat motion by Councilmember Monroe, seconded by Mock? Okay, then I'll keep doing it. Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion does carry. We are flying. No unfinished business. Mr. Merrick, 2019 preliminary levy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So
You're welcome.
the Council's had several work sessions regarding the 2019 budget and preliminary levy. Tonight, we're asking the Council to set a preliminary levy for the 2019 budget year. That's a number that you can lower but cannot raise. And so before we get into the resolution and asking the Council to consider, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we've discussed so far, just for anyone who's watching at home. So the anatomy of kind of the budget, something that we've run is we really have two separate businesses. One is the enterprise fund, so that's water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater. That's paid for through monthly utility bills and new development connection fees. The second business that we run is kind of the general fund, and that's paid through property taxes, and that's in essence what we're talking about tonight. And so that's the common services that you receive: snow plowing, parks, law enforcement, fire department, building inspections, etc. And that's paid through by roughly about 80% in property taxes, and then the balance through state aids, permits, fees, and fines. Our budget process, so we started in June and July this summer, kind of building that draft budget for the Council to review. The Council had looked at several drafts. And then tonight we're asking the Council again to set kind of the ceiling for the preliminary levy. The budget is still in draft form, and so that can change. But again, that tax levy, the amount of property taxes that you're collecting, can only go down once you've set that max. In October and November, we'll review our budget conditions. And then towards the end of October, early part of November, property owners will receive a truth in taxation statement. So that'll give the public hearing date for the city, where they can review and provide testimony related to the proposed property taxes in Carver. That is set for December 3rd here in Carver. There are typically kind of three main truth and taxation hearings a resident can go to. They can go to the counties, the school districts, and the cities. They're all three separate public hearings, and each agency or governmental agency has its own truth and taxation hearing. It can be somewhat complicated in that it all comes on one bill. So what we've talked about before, it's kind of like getting your CenterPoint, Excel, and cable bill all on one, but each the county, city, and school district set their own levy. So that's something that we try to put in our truth and taxation presentation to residents, is showing them the tax statement and how that flows together. And then finally, after you receive that testimony at your last meeting of the year in December, the Council will consider adoption of the 2019 budget and levy. So our revenue overview, we're anticipating 65 housing starts. We are anticipating a need for a full-time building inspector, marginal change in local government aid, and then some contributions from the Special Capital Fund to pay for our last payment for the Jonathan Carver Parkway Corridor Study. Breakdown of anticipated revenues for 2019. We're seeing a slight downturn with property tax revenue as it relates to percentage of the whole. We've been hovering around 80 to 81%. 2019's at 77%. Based on our draft budget, you can see debt service in the past has been about number 2 or number 3 as it relates to the total expenditures. With the City Hall debt service, that's jumped up to 29%, and so that's the leader as far as expenditures go, followed by public services, and then community development is the combination of building inspections and planning. Again, Broadway City Hall, so that's our first in a 20-year debt service payment schedule is going to take place in 2019. Just about $373,000 for our first debt service payment. There's also some costs associated in the budget with building operations and maintenance. Getting back to our conversation that we've had, our ongoing dialogue with residents related to the Broadway City Hall project. Back in March of 2018, we had an estimated tax impact of $200 on a $300,000 home. That was the project in a vacuum, so not considering any of the other budget considerations the city would have, but with Springstead's help, we did an analysis. And you'll see later on in slides how that kind of merges together with the 2019 budget, because I think you'll see in what we've discussed earlier in work sessions is that some accommodations were made to offset that debt service payment. So again, the corridor study, this is something that we're hoping gets completed, frankly, by the end of the year. We've been pushing. Andrew and I had a meeting with Carver County and WSB about 2 weeks ago, kind of putting together some numbers related to finishing up the study. They were using this is a little bit off topic, but they're using some traffic numbers from the Met Council that weren't working out through their systems. They weren't correlating, and so they're having to revisit their traffic study component of this corridor study, so they're going to be coming back, frankly asking for the city and the county to contribute to a scope change and some increased dollars to complete that study. So once we have the details on that, I'll be bringing that back to the council for consideration. Full-time building inspector. So initially we had talked about starting this position in January to save some costs and frankly to accommodate our hiring schedule. We moved that back to March 1st. That's a starting pay of $55,000. We have several significant commercial projects, and we're also planning a single family as well. We do think this is light that will likely have more as it relates to single family here, but we've traditionally tried to be conservative and not put ourselves in a position where we have to do a budget amendment mid-year because housing expectations haven't been met. Other personnel issues, so we're in the second year of a 2-year collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME, so that calls for a step increase and a CPI adjustment. We get the CPI adjustment based on the Minneapolis Federal Reserve website's CPI calculator, and that's at 2%. We do have 3 full-time employees that are at the top of the scale, so they will not receive a step increase, but they are eligible for the CPI increase pending council approval for non-union employees. We also have an additional part-time receptionist administrative assistant planned to handle front desk operations. Other budget considerations, and this is something that the council discussed at length. We did have some up and downs related to our employee health insurance. We've made 2 significant changes in the last 2 years. One changing to a high deductible plan, and then the second to change provider and a little bit of the plan coverage. At one point, we had jumped up all the way to a 20% increase. That's whittled back down to 14%, but you may have noticed that this is an ongoing issue for us. That the previous 2 years we had close to 30%, and that called for those significant changes. So an ongoing issue that we're going to have to continue to push and struggle and dialogue with related to the cost of employee health insurance.
It's an ongoing struggle for everybody.
Recreation services agreement. It's the same amount as the previous year for 2018 as far as $51,250, and that's for resident rates at the Curling Center, Community Center, and Town Course. There's also recreation programs. I just talked to the Chaska Rec folks today, and they're going to continue with the open gym at Carver Elementary this winter. We're planning to renegotiate that agreement in 2019. Here's some additional data on the program thus far. In addition to the resident rates and programming, the Chaska Rec staff also helps coordinate community events in the city. Some other miscellaneous projects. The proposed or draft 2019 budget includes repainting of the caboose and a youth baseball field. So that'd be converting an existing softball field into a baseball field. Public services capital. So these are items that are too small to kind of go into a capital equipment certificate, but have been planned for in the city's capital plan. Paul Schultz, the public services superintendent, ran through these, but we also have Brian Skoke on hand if the council wants to ask any follow-up questions related to these items. And again, the council's not adopting the budget tonight, you're adopting the cap levy amount, and so a lot of conversation can happen regarding the budget and the ins and outs. It's just you're setting basically the revenue parameters for it.
Otherwise known as the not to exceed.
Correct. The 2019 budget includes an increase to the training and on-call pay for the fire department. Also includes a $100 increase to the Relief Association benefit from 2207 to 2307. Law enforcement, so our model with Carver County Sheriff's Office remains the same, the 40-hour work week for our town cop, which is Deputy Lassard, and then the shared service model with Laketown Township of a .65 deputy that will work on Tuesday through Friday or a Wednesday through Saturday. Then kind of on to kind of the summary pieces. Our 2019 debt service, you can see the big piece is the $373,000 and change for the new City Hall project. You can see the change as far as a percentage, so 62% increase to the debt service levy for the city, and then that in graph format. And then the general levy, so we kind of split this into two pots. We have our debt service and then kind of the general services, so police, fire, etc. We tried to accommodate the significant increase in debt service by scaling back the general services, so you can see a 2.5% decrease in the general levy need as it relates to the 2019 budget, and then that in graph format. Then kind of where the rubber meets the road, the total levy history. So the current draft shows a 14.5% increase over the 2018 levy, but for context sake, just the debt service alone on the City Hall would have caused a 15.8% increase over the 2018 levy. And as cities grow, the city will likely be in continuing situations where there might need to be a larger levy increase depending upon the council's priorities and the direction. I think the bigger piece is the associated tax impact and the tax rate. Here you can see the total levy history for the city going back to 2015. So getting into the tax rate, here you can see how we position by history and then position with other Carver County cities. The table on your right is the final tax rate in 2018, with Hamburg being the highest, Chanhassen the lowest. And then how we compare as far as our own history, you can see from 2012, and then we had a draft one for the 2019 budget, and then we amended that based on some council direction and got it down to 50.43. But trying to manage that tax rate and how it compares, so we have some slides getting into that here. A big piece of that is new construction, but also market change. So you can see we had about $14 million in new construction, but a $23 million change in market value, and so that 5.6% is a key number. One of the numbers that we've been using on a consistent basis is a $300,000 home, And so if you look at that market change of 5.6%, realizing that in most instances, not all, but in most instances, the average home of $300,000 will have increased by 5.6%. So we try to accommodate that in some of the slides that we show. And so here you can see a $300,000 home in 2018 on average paid about $1,382 in city property taxes. So again, when someone is getting their property tax statement bill, they're looking at the counties and the school districts and oftentimes the Met Council and some watershed districts, et cetera. So it won't come out straight, but the 1,382 is that city tax. And so for pay 19, excuse me, based on that preliminary levy and the draft budget as you see it in your packet, that would come out to $1,461, which would get you a difference of $79. And so you can see, just looking at that City Hall example, we looked at that project in a vacuum, how it compares to when it's incorporated into the 2019 budget. But again, as I mentioned, there can be that percent increase, and so we looked at that. 5.6% raises the value to $316,800. You do your calculations for the homestead exclusion and tax capacity, and at the end of the day, that's $1,554. So this is predicated on the fact that a $300,000 home in 2018 is now valued at $316,800, and so that difference is $172. Our draft one budget showed a difference of $188. And then during work sessions, we also discussed some future project costs or capital costs, and these are going to come at different rates based on council priorities. Some of them the council will have significant influence on, others as in number 5, where the city is already starting to plan for cost share of County Road 11. That'll be in partnership with Carver County. We'll have less control, even though we'll definitely be a partnership with them, but some of these other pieces related to equipment certificates for public services, fire, ultimately that rests on the shoulders of the council. So we wanted to throw those out there, not as if they're all planning in 2019 or 2020, but to give you some idea of the significant expenditures that are coming your way in the following years. So again, tonight we're looking for the council to establish that preliminary levy. There's a resolution to that effect in your packet, along with drafts of the 2019 budget for revenues and expenditures. Happy to sit for questions.
All right, thank you. Council, questions, comments? I'm sensing none. Oh.
I like this budget. I think the fact that the number that we were looking at in March for the City Hall project alone on a $300,000 house, that the tax increase for 2018 is going to be significantly less than that. I think that alone is a talking point that we can use to demonstrate how much work has gone into this budget by city staff. So, job well done. Thank you.
I commend department heads and budgetary responsibility, but at the end of the day, it all falls on Brent. And I think Cindy and I have been through budgets with different city administrators that haven't quite been A, this effective, or B, this poignant. It's actually poignant now. So very much appreciated, all of you. So I haven't sensed anyone coming up with any issues with the process or where we're at. Nothing but praise. And that doesn't happen all the time. So pat yourselves on the back, because we're not going to do it for you. Just kidding. That's what we're doing.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 142-18, certifying the 2019 preliminary levy in the amount of $2,713,263.
Motion by Councilmember Monroe.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Johnson. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Well done. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now moving on to Meridian Fields. I was going to do a Strawberry Fields rendition there, but I don't have it. Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we are reviewing final plat for Meridian Fields. Working through where we're at in the process, this project has been before you several times. Not only did it follow the typical planning process, it also required annexation into the city of Carver and a comprehensive plan amendment. So on the screen now shows where we're at. We're at the final plat stage. Planning Commission has done their review September 6th, so it's before you now as kind of the last step, the last time it comes before council as the final plat for phase 1 of the development. A bit of context of where we're at if someone is new watching at home. So we are just south of Highway 212. We are northwest of Carver Elementary School. If you've driven past recently, there's quite a bit of earthwork that is being completed. So if you see some trucks moving out in what was once a farm field, that's the Meridian Field site.
They're getting after it.
They are. They're moving a lot of dirt. So something that is interesting and exciting about this project is recently all planning projects that have come through the city of Carver have been completed with a PRD, or a planned residential development. D.R. Horton is able to hit our R2 zoning district of our city code straight, so there's no PRD to review on top of the zoning. So if you think about the typical R2, it's about a 7,000 square foot lot, 25-foot front yard setback, 7.5 side yard setback, and rear is 20 feet. So not typical that a developer meets that on the head as it does for this project. So tonight we're reviewing phase 1 of the development. So it's the first 36 lots. There will be a phase 2 of 47, bringing us to a total of 83 lots, which is consistent with what we've reviewed at both concept and preliminary plat. Here is a copy of the final plat that we're reviewing tonight. You can see the 36 lots pulled out a bit, so a pretty technical planning document, but this is the final plat that we're reviewing tonight. And this is the concept plan, so taking that kind of technical document, adding some color, showing you where those first 36 lots are. Something that's been really interesting to work through with D.R. Horton is access into this site. So it started out with a roundabout, if you'll remember, at the concept phase, through preliminary plat and lots of discussion with D.R. Horton and the county. We've come to the conclusion that a roundabout is not effective to get into the site. With the amount of development that we're foreseeing west of the Meridian Field site, that roundabout would clog pretty quickly, making it not effective. So that's been something that's been kind of a moving target for us for a little bit, but with the development team and Carver County, we have been able to figure out intersection details for Meridian Fields, as well as the property directly to the east, which could develop as a commercial property. So to access Meridian Fields, they are working with UP Properties, which is the property to the east, for access to the site. So coming into some of these intersection details, this has probably been the heaviest lift for this project, is thinking not only what this project is going to do to the intersection of Minnesota Drive, previously conveyed as the extension of Spring Creek
Can I
Drive.
stop you right there?
Yeah.
Why did we change it from Spring Creek Drive to Minnesota Drive
Sure.
on the west side?
So at a staff level with the fire department, it was determined that Spring Creek was getting pretty lengthy moving east. So with the Meadows development, there are several houses addressed off Spring Creek Drive, and to have it also move west, the length that it was going to travel started to feel like it would be cumbersome if there was an emergency call. So it splits Spring Creek Drive at Jonathan Carver Parkway to Minnesota Drive and Spring Creek
So
Drive.
is this going to be common now that when we split across a major road, we're going to change the name of the road on the other side?
So we had discussions when we started thinking about this idea of what was existing today and how they split currently. And since this is going to be one of the main collectors with several housing developments, we felt like this was a good spot to
Okay.
change it. So currently, nothing south of the Minnesota Drive, Spring Creek Drive will be changing. If we had to, there aren't houses addressed off like Ironwood, so it would be an option, but we felt like this would be an effective spot due to the size and the volume Minnesota Drive could see.
Thank you.
Sure. So thinking about access into the site and everything that's going to develop west, we have worked really hard collectively to figure out an intersection that we think is going to work. One of the one of the interesting players in this is that commercial parcel as well. So thinking not only about residential traffic, but also what could be on the site for a commercial user. So you'll see this is the ultimate build out of the intersection of Minnesota Drive and Jonathan Carver Parkway. You'll see coming out of Minnesota Drive onto Jonathan Carver Parkway, there are 2 left-hand turns. So that's the ultimate build out. Right now, there's only 1 receiving lane onto Jonathan Carver Parkway. So it won't look like this day one when it's constructed, but once Jonathan Carver Parkway is reconstructed, this will be the ultimate layout of the intersection.
Can I just ask a question about the
Yes.
intersection? So we don't have the results of the corridor study yet,
Correct.
but are you working with those folks to see if it'll jive, or it's a little bit, kind of hard to guess what they're gonna?
Yes, so we've been working really closely with the county and WSB, talking about some of these numbers and what it could look like. It's been just interesting thinking Meridian Fields needs this access, but what else are we going to need? So this caters not only for the 83 homes that are coming in, but also the commercial user and everything west that we think will happen. So it's been a really interesting process to get so many like minds together to try to hash through some of this. But yes, we've been working closely with the corridor study information.
Okay, and avoids having to potentially tear this all out in 3, 5, 10 years.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's interesting too with the Meridian Fields development. There will only be 1 access for a while since we don't have any development west of it. So we needed to be thoughtful. If something needed to be done, they need to be able to get in and out of their development.
Thank you.
So do we have any expectations this will have a stoplight?
We think someday in the future, yes. Meridian Fields alone is not triggering the need for a stoplight.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Moving into the striping plan, so this can get a little tricky to read, but it shows the turn lanes that will be constructed on Jonathan Carver Parkway going into Meridian Fields. So you'll see that the farthest lane that currently is a bypass lane will be converted into the turn lane to get into Meridian Fields. So it's going to be really similar to what's taking place for Oak Tree to get into the Meridian Fields site as well.
I think that works well.
Something else that has been challenging with this site is the proximity to Highway 212. So we've again worked really closely with D.R. Horton to ensure that this development will be successful for people who are moving in and with traffic on Highway 212. So on the screen right now is a cross section, so showing the homes that will be in Meridian Fields with the distance to Highway 212. There are some challenges here.
Sorry. It's not funny.
There are some spacing challenges, but we were able to work with D.R. Horton to come to the conclusion that there will be berming, significant landscaping, and several homes throughout the development will have beefier construction materials. So when the house is closed with the window shut, they'll tamper the noise a bit more than the typical construction materials that are used.
So there were just a few homes that were that kind of didn't pass the noise test.
Correct.
Are those homes all in this first phase?
No,
Okay.
they're not. And something that was interesting, they didn't pass the test from like 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. It was a 1-hour window, which was kind of odd, but it's that prime traffic time in the morning. So we, I think, have all taken some good solace that it's not continuously overnight from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. that it's exceeding. It's that 1 hour pretty early in the morning.
Right now.
Right now, yes. And something that was included in your packet was some information about Ironwood Park. So when the city began construction of Ironwood Park, we were confined to the property that was previously owned. So thinking about Minnesota Drive and how the layout will affect the park, we've come to some conclusions that we think will lead to a more successful park. So if you think about Ironwood Park, there was a pretty steep slope up to the property line near the multi-use fields. So with some working with D.R. Horton and evening out the grade a little bit, we're able to provide a less intense slope that we hope people will use as like amphitheater seating around the multi-use park. So it makes it less steep, makes it a bit more accessible for people. Hopefully we'll provide some seating. It also, the road realignment avoids a wetland on the property, and the extension of the road beyond what is currently Ironwood Park will allow for future access, which could include parking. So this is something that's a little bit different, but through the opportunity to partner with D.R. Horton on this, we've been able to determine that we think the park will likely be a bit more successful if we're able to make some changes in Ironwood Park. So the landscaping plan is something that I think is really interesting with this project too. If you think about the site today, it's a farm field, so there isn't any tree replacement that is required. So thinking about the amount of trees that the city of Carver will net gain with this project, I think is really exciting. So you can see on the landscaping plan, there's significant buffering along Highway 212, and there's also significant buffering along the east property line. So thinking about the east site as it develops potentially for commercial, there's a pretty extensive buffer that's being added to the site to limit the amount of like light pollution if it's a parking lot directly next to it. So setting this development up for success as things continue to develop around it has been really important to us. So thinking about landscaping and the beefiness of the Highway 212 as well as the east property line. Some examples of the homes that D.R. Horton is proposing. This is really exciting. It's D.R. Horton's first project in the city of Carver. So they have this one as well as Hawthorne Ridge. So it's going to be great to get another large developer in the community with D.R. Horton. So this is their express line. Deb Ridgway is here with D.R. Horton if you have specific questions about the make model.
Come on up. Eventually somebody's going to have a question.
I can't remember what the price point is on these homes.
Prices are going to start closer to the mid 300s. I know at the Planning Commission I said between 3 and 350, but it'll be closer to mid 300s for starting points.
What's approximate square footages of your models?
The approximate square footages range from, and I don't have this exact, but probably about 1,500 up to close to 2,000 square feet. Actually, I think we actually go over 2,000 square feet on
You do.
Some of them, yeah. There's the opportunity to finish space in the lower level with an extra bedroom in some cases and an extra bathroom in some cases as well.
Are they 3-bedroom, 3 to 4-bedroom?
Yes, so 3 bedrooms up, and then you can have an additional bedroom down.
Okay.
And I believe some have 2 bedrooms up, and then an additional 3 to 4 bedrooms.
Told you there'd be questions. Any other questions?
I noticed that there was the red, white, and blue house that's
Yes.
up there. Was that resolved?
Yes, so D.R. Horton worked with a property owner in the Flag House directly adjacent to Highway 212. And at the time that D.R. Horton approached the property owner, he was not interested in being part, it would require annexation. So he was not interested in annexation, so being in the city of Carver or being part of this development. So through the planning process, there's what we call a ghost plat for that property. So it lays out what the lots could look like should that property owner choose to be annexed in the city, and then the lots would be incorporated into the Meridian Fields property. So through the process, the property owner is gaining a little bit of property too. There were some fragment outlots surrounding the property that we couldn't make work for other places. So collectively, it'll make for a pretty easy platting process if and when that property owner should choose to want to be part of the development and in the city of Carver. But D.R. Horton did have some extensive dialogue with him just related to what the project's going to look like and if he was interested.
How long have you been here?
Since March.
You've seen some stuff already. Questions?
There are a couple things I'd like to note, if that's okay.
Get after it.
So it's something that we discussed at the time of preliminary plat were street names. So we've worked with D.R. Horton to come up with different street names. You'll remember there was like a peak circle that was included. The street names in the development now are Meridian Curve, Fields Drive, and Dewalter Circle. So Dewalter Circle will be coming in phase 2 of the development. If you think about the site north of Fleet Farm, that street, we've commonly been referring to it as Commerce. So Walter will find a new home. We thought it was appropriate to take the historic name that was existing in Carver and have it still be in the city today. Number 2, the Planning Commission did review the information at the September 6th meeting. They held a special meeting, which I would like to say thank you to my planning commissioners. They've been really fantastic about holding special meetings to hit certain dates. And they approved the project on a 5-0 vote. The third thing to note, there is a slight change in the resolution that's presented. I had Brenda upload a different version. I called out an outlot that was going to be platted tonight that will be platted in phase 2. So a pretty minor change to one of the resolutions. It went from platting 3 outlots down to 2. So those are my 3 things to note. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
I just have a question. Minnesota Drive,
Yes,
despite kind of the turn to the south, that is going to be an east-west road.
it will.
Collector.
Yes.
Okay.
If I had some ideas, are you open to changing that name?
I think we'd be interested in hearing what your ideas are.
Okay. I think you already know my idea.
I could.
All right. It's not finalized tonight. It is finalized tonight. I'm actually proposing that we name that Monroe Drive.
Nope.
So if I would actually, at any point, make a motion to do that, would I, by any chance, have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll know that moving forward. All right. Just curious.
Oh, so we can go ahead and approve this as it is.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 144-18 approving final plat for Meridian Fields as presented, with street names as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on as presented. I would really like an opportunity to vote that down and then make a motion with as presented and changing Minnesota Drive to Monroe Drive. So
That's changing the motion. My motion stands.
I know. That's why I said I think I'm hoping that we can vote that down. I'm giving hints to the other voters that are on the dais along with us.
It's pretty clear what Cindy
Think it's-
wants.
No,
Well, maybe it's a different Monroe.
it is. So that's
Are you in
what,
favor of that?
that's what I'm hoping occurs right now when I say all in favor, say aye.
To this one.
This is the only one that's on the table.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nay.
Nay.
That motion fails miserably. So I would make a motion that we
Hey,
adopt.
Mr. Mayor, we need to do a roll call.
Roll call. Good call.
Councilmember Henry,
Nay.
Councilmember Mock,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Nay.
Councilmember Monroe,
Aye.
Mayor Webb.
Nay. Motion fails. So I would make a motion to adopt Resolution 144-18, approving final plat for Meridian Fields, with the only change being that we changed Minnesota Drive to Monroe Drive. Yes, Mr. Harris?
Mayor, your motion would also include redirecting that the plat, because your motion is on the resolution, you also need to direct that the plat be revised to reflect that
It's a very
Minnesota
good
Drive is
point.
now Monroe Drive.
So noted. We'd revise the plat to make a notation that it's Monroe Drive, not Minnesota Drive. Thank you, Mr. Harris, sir. So there's a motion.
I will second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries, but let's do a roll call now.
Councilmember Henry,
Aye.
Councilmember Mock,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Monroe,
Nay.
Mayor Webb.
Aye. Motion carries. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you all very much. All right.
Thank you.
No. Thank you. Thank you.
We're not done yet?
All right, we are now moving forward to the 2018 Stormwater Project. Award of bid, Mr. Buddy.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On last Tuesday, we opened bids for the 2018 Storm Sewer Improvement Project. We had 7 bidders, and the low bid was Kusky Construction out of Chaska in the amount of $1,054,250.90. These were very good bids from the city's perspective, or my perspective. They were well below the engineer's estimates by about 17%, which is great for the city. We did also include several alternates that were in there. They were smaller alternates that would include some backflow preventers under some of the pipes under the levee and some sump structures, some manholes that collect grit before the water goes into the Minnesota River. And we would propose to include all of those alternates in the award of this. And so with all of that included, that would include an award to Kusky of $1,098,250.90. And just to refresh everyone as to where this project is located, this really includes 2 separate areas within the city. One of them being a bypass stormwater pipe being put in along Jonathan Carver Parkway from approximately the Public Services Fire Station building down to about halfway down the hill towards the gravel and Mueller's gravel pit entrance. The other portion of the project is the what we've been referring to as the Main Street Lift Station project, and so this was packaged together with that with the intent to try and get more favorable bids. And so this is the other piece that is included with that. A little closer view of each of those is on the screen here. That one's pretty self-explanatory. But then this one included 3 separate subparts. One is putting in stormwater pipe from the Broadway lift station to the Main Street lift station, so eliminating one of those lift stations that are downtown. Section B there is really just constructing the main lift station, and then Section D sets us up for eliminating some additional maintenance and monitoring during flooding where it connects the storm sewer currently from 4th Street down to 3rd Street. So based off of that project, the city had bonded previously $560,000 back as part of the 217 improvement project. The state had also bonded another $1 million here earlier this year in partner with the City Hall project. So the total amount bonded is $1,560,000, and that's to cover the entire project cost, so both construction and what's commonly called soft costs, or engineering and construction or administration costs. With all of that combined together, we anticipate total project to be about $1,495,000, and that's still an estimate yet because we still have to do some of the inspection work, but that would stay under the total bonded amount by about $65,000.
By how much?
$65,000. And the city did apply for a grant with the Lower Minnesota River Watershed District, and they awarded, the way it shakes out is about $3,000 to construct some of the pieces that were included in the alternates, which is the lower, sump structures to prevent grit from going into the Minnesota River. So with that, before you, we have a resolution to recommend approval to Kusky Construction, and I will sit for any questions.
All right, right in front of us. It's good that we got more than one bid. That's for sure. This is right where we want to be, and everything's coming in under budget. It's good. Any questions, comments? Go ahead.
So will the project be completed this year?
I've spoken with Kusky. They do not want to make a big push on anything that removes curb and pavement, and so there are some larger segments of storm sewer that they could do, but they're going to kind of play it a little bit by ear to see how the weather and everything shakes out. So it will not be completed this year.
But they'll start
That's
this
a
year.
definitely no, it will not be completed this year.
Okay, but it'll start this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because they have to put in the main lift station structure. That's kind of the priority number one for us with this whole project. So they will be doing that in late fall, early winter.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Johnson?
And is that main lift station structure what we were waiting for the river to go down for, or what was going to help us with bids?
Yes, it will. So we've softened up the contract language a little bit to allow them a lot more time to build it. Winter construction is ideal for that because the river level will be low and you're not going to see, you don't have the risk of those spikes from a flooding event. So yes, that is what we were hoping for.
Awesome. Thank you.
Comments, questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 145-18 to award a contract to Kuski Construction Company LLC in the amount of $1,098,250.90 for the storm sewer improvements project.
There's a motion by Councilmember Monroe,
I'll second that.
seconded by Councilmember Henry. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Comments? Well done.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Andrew. Sorry, Mr. Buddy. Thanks for saving us too, Larry. Almost had us there. We're now on City Council Communications. Councilmember Monroe.
I don't have anything.
Councilmember Johnson.
I echo Aaron's sentiment that the Planning Commission has been hitting it out of the park and meeting quite regularly lately. And also a thank you to the Steamboat Days Volunteer Committee. Everything was awesome.
Councilmember Mock.
We had an HPC meeting last week. We have a homeowners on 3rd Street who, this is their second time that they've come in. So it's right across from your old house, Cindy.
Wow.
So they've been doing some nice renovations on getting that place in some good shape, so.
Councilmember Henry. Hank.
We did not have a Parks Commission meeting this month, so got nothing.
Simple no. Mr. Merrick. Aaron? Brian? Brenda? Andrew? Larry? You want to share anything? We're all good with the annexation and everything? Nothing? Nice. All right, I've got nothing either.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a motion by Councilmember Monroe, seconded by Councilmember Johnson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all for meeting early. I appreciate it.
No, and thank you all. Thank you all for not being frightened.